Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Ascendis Executive Hour. I'm Lauren Young of Theory 61, and I'm excited to moderate this webinar and introduce to you for the first time one of our newest industry experts. This expert was carefully selected to provide innovative insights that I am confident will improve the quality of your meetings. Our topic today is From Snore to Soar, Practical Tips for Leading Productive Meetings, and Ava Butler, Organizational Development Consultant and author of Mission Critical Meetings, 81 Practical Facilitation Techniques, will lead our discussion this morning. Welcome, Ava.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. I'm very excited about your presentation.
Oh,
so for everyone who's listening and watching, if you're new to the Ascendis Executive Hour, I can give you a brief background on its history. So we've hosted these webinars since 2013, in part with the Chicago-based firm Ascendis Learning Connection. The firm was founded by subscription learning management expert Sue Drake. And these presentations are designed to give you a sample of a learning module that can be fine-tuned for your organization. And our hope is that you can use this information to build supplemental partnerships for your organization to generate new growth and progress. The Ascendis Executive Hour also gives you the opportunity to do three things. First, we'd like you to meet one of our subject matter experts who can potentially help you solve a business challenge facing your organization. We can also help you gather information for possible solutions to this challenge. And then you can see the expert in action to ensure he or she is a good fit for your organization in terms of style, personality, and approach. This platform is great to allow you to test the waters with a potential consultant before bringing them into your business. So just a few housekeeping rules before we begin. Please keep your phones on mute today to eliminate any background noise during the conference, as we are recording it for everyone. In the meantime, if you have a question or if you'd like to submit additional comments to Ava or I during the presentation, you are welcome to participate by using the chat feature, which you can find in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. There will also be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar where Ava will be happy to answer as many questions as she can during our allotted time. So here's what's playing in today's webinar. We start off with our challenge of the day, where Ava will ask you a question and invite you to submit your answers via an interactive poll. We'll follow that up by our famous Test the Waters segment, which allows you to basically test drive a sample consulting engagement with Ava. And then finally, we will wrap today's presentation with our What's the Buzz segment. We'd love to hear your feedback and answer any questions you may have during that time. Also, you're welcome to submit your questions via Twitter at Drake Ascendis. And be sure to use the hashtag AEHAVA, so AEHAVA. So if you're listening only, you're not able to view the webinar, maybe you're in the car on the way to the airport, this is still a great way for you to stay included in today's discussion. So I'll give you some more details on your host this morning. I am the marketing liaison for Ascendis, and I also serve as the consumer behavior strategist for my consulting firm, Theory 61. The premise of the name comes from my experience that most executives can name upwards of 60 theories why a business can fail, but there's one theory that never makes the list. And theory number 61 is they still don't understand their customers. So I work with leaders to help them deploy surveys, launch focus groups, and host brainstorming sessions to study customer behavior analytics. And then we'll work to craft marketing strategies to meet their new customers where they are and maintain existing customer loyalty. So now let's get to you, Ava. Whereas I focus on consumer behavior, you focus on organizational development. So can you tell us a little bit about what your organizational development work involves?
Oh, sure. I specialize in partnering with business leaders to define their strategies and build the right operating model to support their success. This includes making decisions and implementing decisions on people strategy, governance, organizational models, processes and technology, and business capabilities. And that means a lot of meetings.
Absolutely. That's very interesting, actually. So just one more question before we begin. We've all been to our fair share of meetings, but I'm sure that does not qualify us on being an expert in running them. So how did you become an expert on meeting facilitation?
Well, I learned early in my career that without being able to design and facilitate effective meetings, my work and the organization's successful implementation of change was compromised. So over the last 20 years, I've been honing my skills and gathering tools and techniques to support my work in leading strategy workshops, project meetings, team meetings, etc. In 2014, I published a book on the topic, a how-to guide for running meetings, and I look forward to sharing a little bit of what I've learned with you here today.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, everyone, as Ava begins, I would like to let you know that she has a special giveaway for you at the end of this presentation, so be sure to pay close attention to the information she's about to share. Take it away, Ava.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have a bit of a cold, so I will try not to cough on you all. I'm really excited to be here. Okay. First, let's talk about what most people complain about in meetings. So take a moment to identify what you think is the biggest complaint for you about meetings and what you think others have found.
All right, everyone. So this is a live interactive poll. The question is, according to recent data, what is the most common complaint people have about meetings? No published results, individuals dominate, disorganized, or inconclusive, no decision. Feel free to take a look at these answers here. Click on the one that you agree with, and we will close the poll in just a couple of seconds. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right, let's look at these results.
Okay.
What do you see on your end, Ava?
Okay. So at registration, here they come.
See. Yeah, here they are.
I see. So it's a horse race between no published results, they're disorganized, and inconclusive or no decision. The people on the call don't have people who dominate, so I would consider that good. And let's see what happened when people registered. A little bit different. So in that one, 13% said individuals dominate, they're disorganized was the number one complaint, and no decisions or they're inconclusive. What research showed from the surveys that we polled said inconclusive or no decision is taken. But these are all common mistakes or complaints that frankly waste people's time and undermine organizational success.
Interesting.
Okay.
All right, thank you for that. So now we're going to go into the Test the Water segment. So everyone on the call has the opportunity to test drive how Ava consults her clients. So we'll give it back to you, Ava.
Thank you. So what are we going to learn today? We'll talk about the importance of meetings and so what, why do we care, how to plan for your meeting, how to create your agenda, and a facilitator's guide to support your success. And as Lauren said before, we'll also give you much time to answer your questions. So let's find out who is here. I'd be interested. For the meetings that you attend, for the majority of the time, are you the leader or facilitator, a participant, or it's a split, 50-50?
All right, everyone. I think we know the drill here. Go ahead and vote, and we'll close the poll in just a few seconds. All right. 3, 2, 1. Let's go to the results. All right. Okay, Ava, what are you seeing on your end?
I'm seeing the poll. Do you want me to switch to the next slide?
Let's see. I think we have leader and facilitators about 25% of our members here, and then 75% are saying that they are both leaders and facilitators as well as participants.
Okay. That's interesting. So nobody said that they were just a participant, which makes sense for the purpose of this call. And what I'm going to cover is mainly focused for you as when you're the leader or facilitator, but for those of you who are a participant in half of your meetings, you can also use this information as providing suggestions for the person that runs meetings and influencing the meeting as it's going forward. So thank you for that. Okay. Why are meetings so important? Meetings are commonplace in every organization, but most of them are underutilized at best. In most organizations, employees perceive meetings as their primary time waster. I hear so many complaints wherever I go, in any country, in any industry. However, when used correctly, meetings are a powerful mechanism for expressing ideas, gathering information, making decisions, and communicating changes. People don't often think about it, but meetings are a place where people express and observe an organization's culture, and organizations use meetings to define and perpetuate their culture. For example, is time valued or wasted? Are people's ideas encouraged and used or dismissed? Are problems addressed proactively or ignored? Is open and timely communication expected or discouraged? These are all indications of organizational culture, and you can change your organization's culture by the way you utilize or change your meetings. Despite the ever-continued use of technology and social meetings, people need to work together, and meetings remain essential when working with people. Staff meetings, strategy sessions, project team meetings, and so on remain an integral part of organizational life. And even if coworkers widely describe the meetings you facilitate as a disaster, there is hope. And I'll show you how in the upcoming slides, or begin to show you how in the upcoming slides. Planning for your meeting, essential. What you do before your meeting is every bit as important as what you do in them. Detailed planning is essential for consistent success. So let's see what you think. One of our last polls here. How much time do you think is required to prepare for a meeting? The planning takes more time than the actual meeting, less time, or about the same amount of time?
I think I know the answer to this one. All right, everyone, go ahead and vote. Looks like the votes are coming in quickly this time. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm closing the poll. And no surprise here. Everyone is saying that it takes more time than the actual meeting to prepare for. Do you agree with this, Ava?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I would say if you don't have time to plan your meeting, postpone it, because you're not going to get the results that you need at all.
Interesting. We have a quick question for you as well. Susan, what percentage of organizations deliberately use meetings to reinforce culture?
I would say very few think about it overtly, but your culture is permeated through the way that you work and your meetings. If you do want to change the culture of your meeting, I would say a good place to start, the culture of your organization, a good place to start is by changing the way you run your meetings. And I've seen this over and over again with projects I've done in the past, where we can start to do things differently in the meetings we run for our project or for a strategy session, et cetera, and it starts to change what people expect. So, for example, if you hold people accountable for what they say they'll do in a meeting, and you actually have the audacity to follow up and say, okay, did you do it? Did you do what you said you'd do in the time frame that you did it? That starts to perpetuate more accountability throughout the organization. So that's one simple example.
Perfect. I hope that answers your question, Susan. Thank you very much.
Okay. So let's look at pre-meeting planning questions. They fall into 5 categories: foundation, specific agenda items, logistics, reporting, and evaluation. We'll take them one at a time. Foundation planning questions. What's the purpose and or goals of this meeting? It sounds pretty basic, but you'd be surprised how often a meeting's purpose, goals, and expected outcomes are not clear or agreed upon. And this lack of clarity means your meeting is going to be doomed from the start. Is the meeting the best way to accomplish these goals? You'd think that I would be saying yes, of course. But even the best run meeting can be a waste of time if it's not necessary in the first place. So keep in mind that your ultimate goal is to work for the success and best interest of the organization you serve, and meetings are not always the best answer. Who owns the meeting? The meeting facilitator is not always the owner of the meeting. The owner is often a line manager or executive who can delegate the facilitation of the meeting to a team member or outside facilitator. But regardless of who facilitates, the meeting owner needs to be in alignment by approving the agenda, processes, and participants. Who should be involved in planning this meeting? Involve key participants, especially when the meeting is very important. It creates a shared sense of ownership and will help you avoid landmines that could come up, especially if the meeting could be contentious or it's a major meeting like a strategy retreat or a important meeting where important decisions are going to be made. Think about the specific issues and agenda items to be addressed. What information needs to be gathered and disseminated before the meeting so you can use your time in the meeting successfully and efficiently. And then think about who needs to attend this meeting. So many times I go into a meeting with one of my clients and I say, why are there so many people here? Or what's the purpose of these people here? And they say, well, we've just always done it this way, or so-and-so is interested in the topics. Well, that's not the right way to use people's time wisely. So think about what decisions need to be made, who's going to make them, and who really needs to be in the meeting. For all other people, they can either be consulted before a meeting or informed of decisions and information after the meeting. The best date and time and location for a meeting, especially if you're dealing with virtual meetings in many time zones, think about the date, the time frame so you can get most people on the call, and then, of course, the location, what's convenient if it's a physical meeting. And once again, how to use the meeting time wisely. What correspondence or pre-work can be done before people get in the room. So once you've answered those foundational questions, move to specific agenda items and answer those. So you've got the purpose of your whole meeting, but what's the purpose of each agenda item? Specifically, what do you want to have accomplished? So instead of writing, for example, tax report on your meeting agenda, agree how to improve the tax report, or something specific, a verb followed by noun, so you know exactly what you have expected as the outcome. What are the appropriate facilitation techniques? How are you going to manage that discussion through materials, breakout sessions, step-by-step questions, whatever it might be? How much time is required? As I said, handouts, overheads, visual aids. Who's going to facilitate or present each agenda item? There's usually a breakdown, and make sure that those people are informed and know what they're expected to do. And then how should each agenda item be introduced or teed up so that it's a logical flow and makes sense for the participants? Logistics. Communication experts state that nonverbal communication comprises 55% of the total message. If your physical environment is not conducive to productivity and creativity, the chances of your meeting accomplishing its goals are much more slim. So ensure that your physical environment is well prepared. As much as is in your control, think about the room you're in, the feel of it, the light, if windows are available, etc. Set up the room in such a way that everyone can see each other. I've got a couple of examples there on the right. The most common successful option for room setup is the U shape, where people can see each other and see the presenter in the front and any visual aids that you might be using. If your group is too large, you can use the herringbone or round tables. The other option to the U shape is just one big round table where people can see each other. But it's important that it feels like it's a team there to communicate and work with each other, and you can have eye contact with each other. And that's, of course, for physical meetings. Think about your charts and easels that you need. How many? Where would you put them? Refreshments, any internet access or testing, especially if you're using links with presentations, things like that. If you've got a large meeting, how to make sure that people can hear each other with microphones, etc. Thinking about car parking, accessibility for people with special needs, name tags, etc. I suggest for all of these planning questions, and this one especially, make your own checklist so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you've got a meeting. Some of them will be the same repetitively if you've got repetitive meetings, but other times it'll change. Reporting questions. How are you going to report out the outputs of your meeting? And of course, you would hope that you've got very clear and significant outputs or outcomes. So what level of documentation is necessary? Do you need blow-by-blow minutes of the meeting, which from my perspective is rare, or is a clear list of next steps, who does what by when, and decisions taken and who was in the room appropriate enough? So think about that and agree with your meeting participants of what's the most useful for them. And then what's the best way to arrange for the meeting notes to be documented and distributed? If you use flip charts or other visuals, you can use those to either document, type up your information. Sometimes you can just take a photo of them and stick it and send it to people if it's clear enough. Other options are to have someone in the room typing minutes or decisions as you go. And then think about where you're going to put these. Do you send them out to people by email? Do you have a shared drive? Or where are you going to document and hold all this information so you go back and look at it? As I mentioned before, next steps from your meeting today should be reviewed at your meeting in the future to make sure that people are already following up. And then how are you going to evaluate the effectiveness of your meeting? Continuous improvement is essential, and you want people's feedback. So think about how are you going to evaluate the effectiveness. You can put it as an agenda item with making 2 columns, do this again, do differently the next time. You can ask for feedback as a discussion item, or simply putting Post-it notes up on a chart or a wall before people leave the room. You could do a survey afterwards, or you could ask informally. But I would, regardless of the technique, and you can mix these up from meeting to meeting, be sure that you're gathering feedback as well as thinking yourself of reflecting on the meeting, how has it gone, and what can I do better the next time. So once you've answered all those questions, and it sounds burdensome, but it becomes quite routine once you do this a lot. And as we said, the planning will pay off. You're ready to create your agenda. So finalize the order and the flow of your agenda. Review selected techniques and processes and time frames. Identify alternative techniques in the event that they are needed. So, maybe if you think, well, if this takes longer, how can I truncate something later in my agenda? Or if somebody's not in the room, how would I move to a different agenda item, whatever it might be? Then obtain final input and approval from key participants, as we talked about before, and send it out in advance to all people, along with any pre-reads or pre-week work or information that you want them to look at so they're prepared. Okay, let's look at an example. Sam Ballard is a mid-level manager in the operations department of a manufacturing group. And he's going to call a meeting to prepare a presentation to ask for approval of an expensive piece of new equipment that they want to purchase to improve their operations. And it's the meeting they're going to present as a team to their top management. And so this is the agenda that Sam has prepared for the meeting. So look at what he's got there in the agenda he's provided, and I'd love your feedback answering this question. What advice would you give to Sam on how to improve his agenda? I'll flip back to the agenda. So just type in your responses, and I will be, and I'll see what you have to say.
Sounds great. Thanks, Ava. So I'm looking over this meeting agenda now.
Mm-hmm.
What would I do?
Okay, and I've got some answers coming in.
For sure. I was going to say for number 2, there's a 120-minute initiative on there. I'm a little nervous about that for 2 hours.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. So asking, 120 minutes to prepare a presentation, that looks scary.
Yeah.
Other things that people are asking are describe who the audience is by role. So, so in other words, who are the people in the room by their title?
That's a great one.
He definitely needs to take a break. Someone else is suggesting. You may not have noticed, but his meeting is on a Friday afternoon from 2 to 5, which may be either a great time since the end of the working day, or maybe it's a terrible time. And the main issue and the highest risk for Sam is that he's got 2 agenda items, no breaks, and a lot of time with no clarity on how he's going to accomplish those goals.
Mm-hmm. Sue also brings up another good point. Does everyone know where conference room B is?
Good point.
Mm-hmm.
Very good point.
I've run into that
depending on your audience, you need to know where that is, and certainly in large organizations, it could be very confusing what building, et cetera.
I've definitely run into that where all the conference rooms have the same names on each floor, so you need to know which floor you're going to be on to make sure you're in the correct conference. That was such a headache.
Yes, and then you're late and people are angry, and it's not going to start off well. Okay, so let's see given the feedback, let's see what Sam has done. So his next version of the agenda, he hasn't done the added where the conference room is or the titles, but he has broken down his agenda so it's a bit more detailed. He's still got some chunks of time here that are large. He's got a 35, a 45, and a 15-minute block, but he's definitely thought it through a little bit more. It also explains to the participants a little bit more detail of what they're in the room to do for that 3-hour meeting, which is pretty long. Okay. So I guess the thing I would say here is that a meeting that is a good agenda looks like something like this. Create your own template, something that works for you so that you can fill in the blanks. Another thing he could have done but didn't do on this agenda is to say who's going to lead these sessions. So that's another opportunity, if appropriate. Okay. From there, create a facilitator's guide, which is a detailed plan of the block and tackling of how your meeting is going to run. It includes sequencing, the materials required, the breakdown of time, and who leads things. Use it for yourself and for any others who are on your planning team. So this is not for, the facilitator's guide that I'm going to show you is not for everybody. The agenda I just showed you is. The detail here is really like your notes for making sure that you're doing things well. You can also use the facilitator's guide to reflect the lessons learned for future meetings as you want to continue to improve. So here's an example of Sam's Facilitator's Guide. Now, this is small font, and I'll show you a blow-up of a couple of these things in a minute. But you can see that he's got a lot more detail. He's put his agenda items from his agenda in bold, and then he's written down the details of how he's going to manage each of those sessions in more specific breakdowns. So things that have 45 minutes are broken down into 15-minute slots, etc. So let's look at a couple of examples, a few excerpts here. So determining what data is most pertinent to the management team. He's broken it down into 3 segments. He's looking at what will it take to convince the executives to make this investment in operations, and realizing that their criteria may be different. He's also doing something very smart, which is he's thinking about what else is happening in the business that we need to consider. So in other words, are we going through cost cuts? Are we going through expansion? Do we have new product lines? Anything else that will influence the decision? And then to determine how to incorporate any concerns, priorities, or criteria into the group. He's going to then take a break, which is good because he's going to have a lot of information. You might need to move some things around in the room. Or if anything has gone off wire, he's got some plan to think it through and talk to key people. Then he's going to go back and plan the presentation. He's doing this in 3 steps. One is to create the flow and story of the presentation. He's going to use large Post-it notes that he's going to put on the wall with a marker so that they can tell the storyline as they go along. And the reason for the Post-it notes is they can move things around as they decide what's the main flow of the story. Then he's going to break it down into 2 groups and split up the presentation and work on the details of it. Now, he's planned in advance, and this is important, who's going to be in what group. So he's probably thought about the personalities and styles. Maybe somebody's more strategic thinker, one's more tactical, varying roles so that he can use people's time wisely and they'll be an effective team. He's got their names written on flip charts in advance, and he's going to float between the 2 groups, making sure that it's all going to meld. Then they're going to put their information back up on the wall, walk through the story, and gain feedback. So you can see that he's gone a long way from plan the presentation for 120 minutes, and this is a subset of what he's planning to do, but the chances of him being more successful are extremely high now, far more than when he was in position before. Some more insider information. So you plan the meeting, created your agenda, you've got your facilitation guide. Setting the stage, and this means as you get into the room, plan to arrive early to make sure everything is set up as you expect. Prepare your flip charts or any other visual aids far in advance, or maybe the night before, but in advance, so you can take care of any last-minute needs as you walk into the meeting and be able to greet people as they arrive. This added preparation time will keep your own stress level down and allow you to be agile if there are any last-minute changes. And expect changes. I've run hundreds and hundreds of meetings, and there has never been a meeting that everything goes exactly to my plan. It's just not going to happen. The planning is critical and allows you to be more agile on your feet. Something is going to take longer than you expect or less time. Maybe a key participant is not in the room or has to leave early and you need to move things around. Whatever it might be, plan in advance. Maybe you see signs of boredom or conflict where you need to take a break and manage those offline. Whatever it might be. Expect changes and be ready for plan B. But the more planning you've done, the better most effective you'll be. Continuously improve. I've been running meetings for well over 2 decades, and I'm still learning new techniques and strategies. and ask for feedback as we've talked about. And continue. And if you're changing your style and changing your meetings, be overt about it. Tell people you're not satisfied, other people aren't satisfied, and that you want their help to help you change your style and make your meetings most effective for everybody. In summary, before we take questions, because meetings are so critical, effective meeting facilitators are an essential link in the chain of people who deliver organizational success. And meetings provide occasions where decisions are made, priorities set, and changes are agreed upon. And as I said before, meetings define and perpetuate organizational culture. And I think when you're thinking about your meetings in this wider context, you'll be more cognizant of what you want to accomplish, how, and with who in the room. And as we said before, the quality of your meeting is relative to the quality of your planning. For more information, there are many books out there. Mine is one of them, was mentioned at the beginning, Mission Critical Meetings, 81 Practical Facilitation Techniques. And these are techniques around brainstorming, gathering information, making decisions, implementing decisions, and evaluating your meetings. There are more facilitation techniques in the world. These are the 81 that I use over and over and over again and have found to be the most practical. And it's available on Amazon if you're interested. And with that, I think I am opening it up to questions.
Thank you, Ava. That was fantastic. So now we're at the What's the Buzz segment. This is where you have an opportunity to ask us any questions or provide feedback about what you learned today from Ava's presentation that maybe shocked you, maybe surprised you, or gave you some time to think about what you could do with your own organization. So thank you, everyone. I see that there are multiple questions in the chat area. We're going to get to all of those in order. Don't worry, we have plenty of time. But I'm so glad that everybody was just as jazzed about your presentation as I was today, so thank you. As a thank you for attending the webinar today, Ava has a token of appreciation for you. So, Ava, would you like to provide some background around what this giveaway is?
Sure. This is Leading Transformational Change, Top 10 Tools for Transformation. And this includes some of the top tools that I use in meetings, as well as other tools that I use around organizational change. And once again, it's things that I've learned over the many years of my personal experience.
Thank you. So this is really exciting. Everyone is going to receive this guide in a follow-up email that we'll be sending out tomorrow, which will also contain the link to tonight's or this afternoon's recording. It's afternoon now here. So you can look forward to receiving that tomorrow. Also, if you're interested in learning more about today's program or Ava, or if you'd like to download the full version of Sam's Facilitator Guide that was featured earlier on, you can visit the Ascendis LMS, which stands for Learning Management System. If you're looking to gain some in-depth access to all of our global thought leaders, as well as an expansive collection of their top presentations, feel free to log on and create a free profile here. It's alc.ascendislms.com. So the link is here on the slide in orange. So after you create a login, you can browse the complimentary content that's provided by our experts in the areas of business acumen, leadership, marketing and sales strategy. Marketing and sales and then strategy. We've broken those up into 4 different categories. Or you can also upgrade your subscription to view the premium content and have full access to the in-depth trainings, the self-paced sessions, and interactive materials that will help move your business forward. So you can sign up as an individual, or you can contact our founder, Sue Drake, directly for questions about enterprise subscriptions and getting your entire team on board. So here is her contact information if you're interested in doing that once you've signed up for your account. So let's go back to the chat to kind of field some of these questions that are coming in. And we have one more. Let's see. In my experience, companies want to have an open, communicative environment, but people are reluctant to give true feedback. How do you encourage true openness?
I would say that if you don't think you're going to get honest feedback, and depending on your organization's culture and the group's culture, that could very well be the case, especially if there are different levels of the organization in the room. So I would encourage private feedback through anonymous sources like a SurveyMonkey or something where you can't see who says what. I've even done a, turn the flip chart over and people put their responses in and then you turn it around and look at it together. The key is how you respond. If you get feedback and basically people tell you they hate your meetings and they think you do a crappy job, accept that and be open about it and say, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to use our time like this. Help me be successful. And through your own behavior, you can start to create openness. And it will take time to encourage true openness, but I would start there. You can also talk to people one-on-one or find some mentors that you can trust that you think will give you solid feedback and share it with the group. Most of you don't like these meetings. And how are you going to make it better? And I think you'll start to see the culture and the openness change over time.
Great answer. All right, perfect. Barb asks, what can I do to manage people who talk too much in my meeting? That's a great question.
Oh, yeah, and there's almost always one of them or more. There's a couple of ways. One is always have ground rules to your meetings and do those up front. It's kind of like the prenup of the meeting. You set it before there's issues. So if you have people that are dominating, one of your ground rules, for example, could be equal participation and one conversation at a time if people are talking and they're talking, on the side. As a facilitator or leader of the meeting, you can also say, we've heard Sally Jo's opinion, if she's the one who talks too much. I'd like to hear from other people. Or say, hey, Sally Jo, before you say anything more, let's hear from the others. Or, I've heard a lot from this side of the table. Let's hear what the others think. Another couple of options are to talk to the dominating people up front and privately, either during a break or before or after the meeting, saying something like, I know you're really comfortable speaking with the group and you've got strong opinions, but I'm concerned that the other people in the room are less likely to share their opinions if you always jump in and state yours first. And I would appreciate it if you would help me by holding back a little bit. And so you can enlist the person to do that. Another technique is you can go around the room and ask everybody for their opinion or call on people that are more quiet. So you don't have that dominator, which is very annoying and disruptive.
Yes. Absolutely. That's good advice. Lee has a question. What are the major differences between facilitating a virtual meeting compared to a face-to-face meeting? Do you have any tips?
Yeah, virtual meetings are becoming more and more common, and they are more difficult to facilitate because you can't tell if people are really engaged or not. And the chances of people giving you their full attention on a virtual meeting are not as likely as when they're in the room. In the room, you can, of course, get people to turn off their cell phones, close their computers, whatever your ground rules are. With virtual meetings, those are more difficult. If you can do things where people can see each other, that's better because that face-to-face interaction is so important, even if you're virtual. So if people can see each other, that's helpful. Take the time to make sure that if you're virtual, that people know who's talking. So either have them say, this is Ava in Cincinnati, or this is Michael in London, or it's whatever, so that they know who's talking. Because it's hard if you don't know the voices. So make sure people are identifying themselves. And also take time in your agenda, not every agenda, but so that people can get to know each other as individuals, both in terms of their roles, but also their contributions and their personal, who they are as a person. Teams tend to do better when they know who they're working with. So there are techniques that you can use when your meeting is virtual that will help you overcome some of those barriers by not having everyone in the room.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I like those ideas. Okay, we have a question from Jerry. Are weekly staff meetings a good idea? Ours seem to be a waste of time.
Yeah, they often are. I think it's important that teams who work together communicate. The big question is, what do you talk about in those meetings? And so I would suggest with those staff meetings, first yourself think about what's a use of time and what's a good use of time and what's not. And what are you covering in the meetings? If everyone's just giving a little report of blah, blah, here's what I did this week, like, so what? I mean, that's boring. A lot of things could be sent in a weekly summary so that people could read it in advance, and then spend the meeting working on cross-functional issues or issues between teams that need to be addressed, working on a specific project for improvement, defining a strategy, making a decision, working customer issues, something that's important that has to be done together as a group. And as I said, ask for feedback and you think about who needs to be in the room. Maybe not everyone needs to be in the room for the full. Let's say you've got a 1-hour staff meeting. Maybe you need the full group for the first half an hour, and then you need a smaller group to make a few decisions about a specific thing after. So be very conscious about how you run your meeting. Staff meetings are probably they can really be painful without close attention.
Mm-hmm. I agree 100%. All right, we have one last question. How do you not intentionally talk? I have to get this right. How do you stop intentionally talking over people in virtual meetings? It's hard to tell when others will talk.
It depends on the software that you're using. Some software will allow you to just have one speaker. I think you can create ground rules for people, and then make sure that you're hearing everybody. If you're the facilitator, have people try to make a pause, or if you hear virtual, people talking at the same time, just make sure that you're going back to them. Because what's really annoying is if you're a little bit faster, so your voice gets to be heard, but the person who's a little bit more reticent and won't jump right in, they don't get to say what they can. So you can create some ground rules about that and ask the group for what works for them.
It works. One of my rules has been to use the rule 2 before me. So I'll let 2 people talk before I give my input because I'm very much a type A personality. I'm ready to jump in, but I want to make sure I'm not overtaking the meeting. So even if I am the facilitator, I'll allow at least 2 people to speak before I do in meetings. And I think, it also comes down to how familiar and comfortable you are with the people in the meeting. I think you do find a flow at a certain period of time. When someone's going to jump in and say something, or you can listen for them to take a breath because they're about to start speaking. So I think It also has to do with how familiar you are with the group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that too.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thank you to everyone for your participation on the question and answer session. As I don't see any additional questions on Twitter or in the chat section here, I'm going to wrap this edition of the Ascendis Executive Hour. Ava and I would like to say thank you so much on behalf of the entire Ascendis team for your participation, and we hope that you learned something new that you can share with your team and use it to take your meetings from Snore to Soar. Take care, and we'll chat with you again soon on the next Ascendis Executive Hour.
Thanks, everyone.